Welcome everyone to DBA Firm's webinar today. Leslie and I would both like to welcome you to time blocking for client advisory services. So Leslie, thanks for joining us today. I know that this is going to be a fun webinar for everyone. And I think I just advanced. So I'm Amy McCarty. I'm Director of Operations here at Dillon Business Advisors. And with me, I have Leslie Reeves. She is a client CFO at Dillon Business Advisors. Leslie, you doing all right today?
Yes, I'm doing great today. A couple power outages this morning, so hopefully I stay with you.
All right, well, it seems like Texas has a lot of power outages, so we'll hope that Michigan does not today.
You'll keep us
all right.
warm.
The logistics for our session, we're together for an hour and it does qualify for CPE. So anyone that needs CPE, please make sure to answer the polling questions that we'll be asking. If you don't need CPE, still answer them. They're fun polling questions and they give Leslie and I an idea of where you're at with time blocking, your time blocking journey, just as we talk through content today. There are two handouts. If you look to the right side in that GoToWebinar panel, you have a time blocking template. It's an Excel format to help you as you do your own time blocking or to pass to others in the firm as they do theirs. And then there is the PDF of our PowerPoint today. So you have some examples that we'll show later. Those will be helpful handouts for you. If you have any questions as we go throughout this session, please fire them through the questions panel. Leslie and I will keep an eye on that and we'll make sure that we address them. Or we have Rachel and Marcus in the background. They are listening, so they will be typing answers as questions come through. So feel free to ask away. We do have over 100 people registered today, so we anticipate you'll have some great questions out there. And then there's a survey at the end. All right, that's our logistics. Let's get into what we really want to spend our time talking about today. And so our three main objectives are to help you understand time blocking and what does it look like inside of a CAS firm. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in a short time frame every single month. And so being able to utilize time blocking to help. And then going through some example schedules for you to just help get your brain going on how you're going to time block. And then also, what have we learned, tips and tricks, recommendations from implementing the time blocking technique. And Leslie is full of them over there. So hoping your internet stays on. All right, so let's just start first with what is time blocking. Time blocking is essentially where you're just taking your day and you're chunking it up into blocks of time to a specific task or group of tasks, right? So if in our example, maybe we're doing payrolls and we have 15 payroll clients that we need to do, we would block that time so that we could just stay in the same task group and just crank through instead of shifting from payroll to shifting to tax return prep or sales tax prep and back to payroll, right? So that's kind of an idea of what it is, but Leslie, I'd love for you to explain why this is so important.
All right, well, most of what we're going to talk about today, we're viewing through the lens of the team of three. So if you've been with us on previous webinars, you've heard us talk about the team of three, and that's how we'll present all of this today. And so the amount of focus work or deep work that we need to do really varies from role to role. Some tasks for each role require us to get into this deep work mindset, and it usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes to get into a productive flow for each batch of tasks. Next point, Amy, they estimate that we have 31.6 interruptions per day. Maybe yours is lower. I'm gonna venture to say mine's probably higher. But with that, we also see that employees only average 11.2 hours of productive task work a week. So for me, that's kind of mind blowing. 11 hours of productive work a week. So that is enough of motivation for me to think, well, there's got to be a better way. I if I can be more productive in that 11 hours, if I can stretch those 11 hours more, maybe I can stretch my work week less than 40 hours a week. Because if I can learn to be productive with my time, if I've been wasting around 30 hours a week of non-productive time, then maybe I can make that shift. So that's one reason it's really important to think through this. The last thing is, we will reach a peak productivity. So we are not time blocking for 8 hours of productive or production a day, deep work a day. The top ceiling of that is usually 4 to 5 hours of intense focus a day for people. And I'm going to say, if you're used to working with unlimited distractions, it's going to be really hard for you to work 4 or 5 hours focus at a time. So there will be some work to do over weeks and months to retrain your brain to expand to that 4 to 5 hours of focus time from whatever you're currently getting.
Yeah. So that 15 to 20 minutes to get into productive flow resets every time you get interrupted, right, Leslie?
Yeah. So if you're like me and wear this Apple Watch, I've started turning it to do not disturb, right? Because I can be in a meeting and my juices are flowing and I'm so excited, and then I get a ping from a kid, can I have more screen time, right? And then all that great thoughts that I had are just out the window. So yes, every time you have to reset your brain. Wait a minute, what was I thinking about? Where was I in this project? So can you imagine like trying to work on something, and every however many minutes, you may not even get into your deep work in 15 minutes before you get another interruption.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is super important. Time blocking is super important just to help try to mitigate the interruptions. I mean, there are other things too that you'll have to do, like Leslie, turning to do not disturb, or using the focus setting on your iPhones or other phones. I don't know if Androids have them, but we'll say that they do. But utilizing other techniques, but how do we help ourselves be as efficient as possible and as successful as possible as getting work done, right? Because it doesn't feel good to get to the end of the day and be like, what did I do today? What did I get done? Like that doesn't feel good to anyone. So, all right, let's go through some of the benefits for time blocking to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So we do have, enhanced focus, as we've just covered and Leslie explained there. There's better productivity. We stay in that same task. So not only is it interruptions, but it's changing mindset from performing one task to now picking up and performing another task. And that's even true with, okay, this client's in QBO, but this client's in QuickBooks Desktop, right? Like we're still changing. All right, now I got to remember like where things are in QuickBooks Desktop because I work in QBO so much now and things like that. You get your improved efficiency, you get your reduced stress. It's that feeling at the end of the day that you didn't get enough done, and then just trying to balance it out. I love, Leslie, that you talked about, if it's 11 hours a week of really productive work, like how do we get more done in a shorter amount of time to enjoy more life,
Right.
but still accomplish everything that we have. So that leads us, before we dive further into it, I would love to launch our first poll. And so Rachel's in the background, she's going to launch this for us. And our first poll is, do you currently time block your schedule? So love to just get a gauge from all of you listening. Where are you at with this? Because if you're doing this already, we'll love to hear your tips and tricks and what you've recommended. So yes, you are currently time blocking, you're thinking about it. You really haven't heard of it before, or maybe you have, but you thrive better without structure. And no.
I'm really interested to see who if there are people who haven't heard of this, I first heard about what we're presenting on today in freshman leadership class in college. So it's been a minute, and I definitely did not apply it back then. But it's interesting to see that that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, so it looks like, I mean, winner 43%, majority are, I'm thinking about trying it. But you do have followed next by no. But not only a couple percentage haven't heard about it. So,
All
all
right.
right, that's perfect. Thank you everyone for taking a moment to answer that. Let's dive into how do we even start to think about time blocking? And so Leslie, what does that process look like? I mean, I know it's up here on the screen, but kind of just walk us through that.
All right, so I'll walk through the overview of the process, and then we'll dive in a little deeper. So first, we want to identify all the things that we do. We want to be aware of what we're doing. Then we're going to build out our blocks. After we build out our blocks, we're going to run the schedule. So we're going to try it, see what works, and then finally, we will make some tweaks if necessary. And it should likely be that we will have tweaks. Most people don't get it right the first time.
I say that's super important. Like, it's okay to
Yeah.
start somewhere. Just start
Yes.
somewhere, right? Like,
right.
That's all. So yeah, let's dig into identifying all of the tasks that you do, and you can share with us.
So the exercise that we like to do is for 2 days, write down everything that you do. We're not going to start with the ideal of where we want to get. We're going to start with where we actually are. We're going to start with reality and just be aware. So if, as Amy's mentioned, like if you're doing payroll and you open QBO and you open ADP, and then we have, someone, if you're working in office, someone poked their head in and said, good morning. All right, we want to write down all of those things just so we can understand where we are today. What are we doing and how are we impacted by interruptions or distractions or things that we're not planned for. So with this, we're focusing on work today, but I would say go ahead and do this for your entire day. So from the time you wake up to the time you pick up your phone or you head straight out for a workout or you get the kids ready for school, whatever your day looks like, because we know that what leads up to us logging on at the office has a great impact of what we do for the day. So I think even though we're focusing today on office hours, maybe the next webinar will be about before we log in, but today we want to think about logging everything that we do and just be aware of what that looks like. It may not be ideal yet, but that's where we're going to start and get to work.
I think that's perfect though. It's awareness is what that is. Is it, even if I got distracted by an email and then I checked my phone and then I saw a notification from a Facebook post or Instagram right? And then I went there, like, even though that that's not what you want to be doing, it is important to track it from an awareness standpoint, because that's where it starts. Like, what are we really doing? And then how do we be more intentional and
exactly
structured? Okay, well, let's jump into, we're gonna walk all of you through or talk more about what is actually gathering this list look like. We have some examples, and then what does it look like to block it out? So we're going to start first with CSM role, and then we'll work through controller and CFO. So I have up on the screen a reminder in our world what a CSM, client service manager, what they're doing, and the top responsibilities, goals, desired skills there are just for refresher for everyone. And then we have some of the things that are happening weekly, monthly, yearly for a client service manager. Now, this is a little bit higher level than Leslie, what you just said, like every single thing for 2 days. So we're just using this as an example here. There would be a lot more added for those 2 days on what realistically is happening. And then also is it important for those 2 days to be for a client service manager, like the first 2 weeks of the month to really gauge like everything that is happening? Would you recommend?
Yes, and I think that's something to talk about throughout these roles. We may, in our future iterations, we may have a week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 of the month for client service managers. For CFOs, it may be, the months, because we have a cadence of different meetings, et cetera. So we'll definitely talk about seasonality in creating our best time block.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a list, right? We have this list here. We would have more on our list as we've tracked everything, starting with Workday. Or for those of you that are super motivated, go your entire day, like Leslie suggested. I love it. And then we get into this Eisenhower matrix, which many of you have maybe seen, right? It's our what's urgent and important, urgent and not important, not urgent, but important, not urgent, and not important quadrants. And so how do you go about arranging these tasks into the different buckets, Leslie?
Okay, so Amy, you want to pull out your order just to make
Yeah.
sure it's the same as mine. So so the first thing that we're going to look at with these different quadrants are the not urgent and important, right? So we're looking at not urgent and important. These are the things that were just on the previous slide. These are our responsibilities. These are our tasks that we know need to get done. They're our responsibility, and we need to make time for those. These are our big rocks. If we're thinking about putting in the big rocks and then the pebbles and then the sand, these are our big rock items. So some items included in this would be for CSM, bank feeds, processing payroll, team meetings that are already scheduled, process improvement. So that's one of our deep work things for sure. So we're going to look at not urgent, important things first. And really, we're going to think about what can we do as we talk through the other quadrants to move as much as possible into that not urgent, important, or off the quadrant altogether. So after I've put in my not urgent but important, I'm going to shift over to the urgent and important. So here, this is going to be like client communication, or if some of those things have moved from not urgent to urgent, like payroll, because a client failed to get in hours on time, they forgot to send us new hire paperwork. Anything that is suddenly out of our control in timing is going to move to that urgent. So these are things that we have to do, we have to handle. When we're working on our time block, we can't know what we're going to get in this category each day, but we can schedule time to handle those the things in that quadrant at a certain time of the day, so that it doesn't bleed into all parts of the day. The bottom right, left is the not important and urgent. Am I saying that right, Deb? Not important and urgent. So these things we need to do, they maybe need to be done. So attending a meeting, but it's not really important, relevant for us. Sending out reminder emails to clients to send in your payroll hours. Calls from clients who love to chat and just want to talk through things as a CSM. Maybe it's related to their account, maybe it's related to what they picked up at the grocery store, who knows. So these are types of things that are not really important for us to be doing. Are you still there, Amy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I think I got a warning that my sound was loud. That are not important for us to do. And so maybe it's a better suited for us to automate or delegate these things. We don't want to spend a lot of our time. And then the final thing is the not important and not urgent. So these are things that we probably spend more time on than we're actually aware. So cleaning out our inbox every morning for all of those emails that we're getting from some offer that we signed up for, or somebody picked up our email address. We just need to unsubscribe to those. Notifications, as Amy mentioned, focusing on the turning off our distractions, moving anything that remains a distraction. It's going to go into this category. And so we're going to just take it off. We're going to figure out how to eliminate it, and it should not go on our workday schedule.
Yeah. So let me, one thing, I think when you switch earbuds, you have to, fix your mic option.
Okay. Can you
It
hear me
sounds
now?
better with that earbud in.
Okay.
Yeah. You just got farther away. And we need to hear what you're saying, Leslie. So
Absolutely.
thank you. All right. So when you think about these 4 quadrants, we want everything that we possibly can to be up in the top right corner, which is the schedule. Like all of those things are not urgent because they have been scheduled to be done. They become urgent in that due quadrant when either a client is non-responsive or we have mismanaged our schedule maybe, or been interrupted a lot. But really, is it fair to say in that due quadrant that if it is client, and if it is in part due to the client, that we are trying to solve for that? So if we don't have access to the bank accounts that we need access to and we have to wait for them, then we need to be able to have access so that we could schedule it, and it lands over in the schedule quadrant. Is that fair?
Fair. I think we will always have things that come up, like fires come up for sure. We just want to do whatever we can in that planning, scheduling quadrant to reduce those things. I think it will be rare if someone achieves the never having an urgent, important thing pop up.
You've just turned off all notifications and you're blissfully unaware.
Exactly. Exactly. I did have someone, I replied to an email one time. They emailed me requesting something. I replied to them and it said, I don't check this email. It's going to be a while till I get back to you. And I just thought, all right, I wonder how that's working for you. So yes, people do it for sure. But we do, I mean, as a CSM, we do need to be available, and we'll talk about this as well when we get to the calendar. We want to be available for people. So it's not that we're like turning everything off and we're just going to deep work all the time. We just need to put it in its right place.
Yeah. All right. So that we've listed everything, right? We spent a couple days tracking everything, good, bad, whether or not we want to be doing it. We've tracked it. We've identified that. We've organized them into our quadrants. And so now we want to actually build out what our first iteration of our time block schedule looks like, right? Because it's not final iteration. It is first one. We know it's going to evolve and grow. And so if we look at an example of a calendar block, and before, well, actually, I'll show this first, and then I'll show you the handout if you haven't had an opportunity to download it yet. So what we have first with our calendar block is, here is an iteration for a full-time CSM. And so Leslie, talk us through just this calendar block here and what you think of this.
So this is a full-time CSM. You notice that they are starting their day with client and team communication, aware that we're working with a team within a team, so they need to see what's going on for the day. After that, they're working on the items that they have planned for. So they know every week they've got payrolls to run. Some of them they get hours on Monday, Tuesday, however. And so they should have a schedule by their client and know what's going in at that time. It shouldn't be I'm done with my emails. I'm going to answer emails for the next 3 hours, right? So you want to look at what's going on in the day and then get some work done that we already know is coming. Then after that, we can look at scheduling how our time flows with getting into client work. So it may be answering requests we got that morning. It may be working on bank reconciliations. It may be working on bank feeds. It may be adding fixed assets. All those things that our CSMs do, they've got times blocked for that in this like ocean color. And so that is in the schedule. We also have our meetings. And so we've talked about with you guys how we do a team meeting each week. We do bi-weekly one-on-ones. And so our CSMs should have 2 standing meetings a week with the team and with their one-on-one person. After that, we also have some meetings for onboarding. So set aside in this Thursday kickoff meeting set aside, we have those times blocked for in case we have new clients. Those kickoff meetings are at least we have a couple times a week blocked off that everyone can get together. So those may actually happen, and then those kickoff meetings may turn into client work. One thing we really want to make sure is that we're not like checking emails, like we don't have that ping on and we're not checking emails all throughout the day. So once in the morning, check again a few hours later, and then check again at the end of the day before you wrap up. But again, we can't get into that. If it takes 15 minutes to 20 minutes to get into deep work, we can't get into that if we're constantly going back to tasks that are urgent, but maybe not important for us or can wait at least a few hours.
Yeah. So this client work and the example that everyone sees on the screen really could be broken out even more. Like you were mentioning, Leslie, it could be broken out into bank feeds. It could be broken out into like closing the month,
Right.
like however we wanted to break it out, right? This is just a lumped iteration of it to make it a
Yeah.
little bit easier to look at.
And I will say with our client service managers, we have, and I'm sure you guys do too, have different sizes of engagement. So some of our clients, some of our CSMs have clients that may take a full day to do all of the things that they do for them in a week. And if that's the case, we'll have CSMs who block all of one day outside of communications to work on that client. We have other CSMs that maybe have 10 clients that make up that same amount. And so for that, it makes sense to batch that. So batching bank feeds at one time for 10 different clients so that you're in QBO once, pulling bank statements. That doesn't really require that much deep work. So, you can do all of those and kind of factor those in on the time of day where your brain's just not as sharp, but you need to pull those. So there's definitely different ways that we can place the items, the placeholders, depending on the type of client load the CSM has.
I really like that you just brought up putting some of the work that doesn't require a lot of brain at the time of your day that you typically crash, or just need something that is a little more repetitive, I guess is a good way to say it, right? Like everyone has a different part of the day. So that goes back to that awareness. Are you better in the morning? Are you better in the afternoon? Are you better midday? What does that look like for you? Yeah. We have another example of a part-time CSM, just for example purposes, right? We have a number of part-time CSMs here at Dillon Business Advisors. So anything, what we do have different here is the wrap up projects based on messages at the end of the day, kind of Leslie, what you alluded to for the previous one that didn't exist. So a different way to look at it. Anything you want to add here, Leslie?
Yeah, so the thing I would add here is for our part-time people, it's really important that we have core hours. So our core hours are 10 to 2, and we want people to be available for teamwork and client responses during that time. So while we are part-time and we are flexible, it doesn't make sense in the team of 3 for people to for someone, a part-time CSM, to work all their time from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. when other people have logged off. So it is important with the schedule is to have some, whatever works for your firm, for your company, but have some overlapping time, and then make sure that that is when teamwork is scheduled.
Yeah.
And then as Amy said, the last thing is just to wrap up the projects, and we can talk about that more as we look at other roles in time blocking.
Perfect. All right, well, that was a look at CSM role and time blocking and some examples there. Let's move to our next poll. So our next poll is, what role do you currently sit in? And this is actually a mark all that apply. So all of them that apply to you, and again, we're using our terminology on what we call our team members and our roles here, but take the equivalent inside of your firm. So this will be fun because I know many of you likely sit in multiple roles. Leslie, what would you mark here?
I would mark CFO.
I didn't know if you would pick more than one.
But in the past, when I began with DBA, I was sitting in a CSM seat. We weren't CSMs quite yet, but I was sitting in that seat, and then I did sit in a controller seat and before taking the CFO role. So I can say I've been there. And I will say I started time blocking as a CSM. So definitely it is able to be applied to all roles.
That's awesome. All right, well, we got some good responses coming through. It looks like almost 80% have voted. And the most people, 46% CFO or equivalent, followed next by other. So maybe the title isn't there. And then we go from there. That's awesome.
Can we drop the other in the chat?
Yeah. Yeah, share what
Maybe
other means to you if you picked it.
And maybe it's just my family members.
All right, let's continue on. We looked at the client service manager. Let's move now to client controller. So again, up on the screen, you have the past is our focus for client controller, top responsibilities, tax planning, prep, tax projections, financial optimization, compliance oversight, CSM support. And then we move to same thing would happen in that role, right? What is everything that you are doing for at least 2 days at an appropriate time in the month, right? So our controllers would be like middle of the month there that we would want to be looking at, and we know that, you know, depending on the time of the year, that might look different. But here are some examples of things that client controller would be doing weeks, months, years. And so once we have that list, we are then going directly to our Eisenhower matrix and organizing our quadrants here on what's important but not urgent, right? What can we schedule? What is important and urgent? What are those things that come up? And then what is not important but urgent that we need to really think about? How do we delegate, right, Leslie, or automate? And then what do we delete? What can we delete from the list of things that we do?
Well, I think one thing that we can delete that is, I mean, of course, we're going to say social media scrolling in the middle of the workday, you know, maybe calls, robocalls, etc., like setting boundaries up so that those things don't happen. I think one thing beginning especially in a manager level, and this probably happens on CSM as well, but is the duplication of tracking things, right? So we're really working hard. I know most accountants love their Excel spreadsheets, and it is hard to let those go. But if we're tracking in our practice management software, we use Canopy. If we're tracking in Excel for our own good, and then our teammates are also tracking in their Excel and we're not sharing, I mean, like that is just so much duplication and needs to be deleted. We need to figure out how to coordinate efforts. There's always there could be a place for an Excel sheet, but maybe there are some things that we don't have to do with that. So I think that's one, as a manager of people, that might be one that we could probably work on deleting. The other thing is delegate. So delegate's not a bad word. With delegation, we are empowering others to do their role. So we're stepping into the role that we have, the responsibilities we have, all those things in the not urgent but scheduled. We want our time to be focused on those. So the things that are taking our time that someone else could do, maybe for a controller, one of the things we've done recently is, filing a change of address with the IRS. That actually does not need to be done by a controller. We have a fantastic tax admin there. That is a great thing for her to do, and it fulfills her to have more things to do and learn more tasks. So that would be the kind of thing that we would delegate. Setting up projects and project management. Again, not something that our controllers should spend their time on doing. So those are the types of things that it's not that those things don't need to be done. They do, but there may be someone who's better at doing those. I think the not urgent and important, again, that's coming mainly from our roles and responsibilities for that role. So those are the things that we want to spend the most time. We want to take away as many distractions and make sure that we're getting deep in that. And then the urgent and important things, the things that we are going to do, we're not going to push off for later, are supporting our CSMs from the client controller role. That's a big piece of our time. Client service managers have around 85% billable time, and then we're targeting 70% for our client controllers, and that additional 30% is a portion of that is meant to support the CSM. So we do want to make sure that we have a time in our time block for that.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned for delegate that it is empowering others to do their role, right? And making sure that they know that it's something that they can do, that you are still holding on to potentially, or just thinking that it'll be quick and you can just get it done, when realistically you can get more done spending time elsewhere. So
yeah, future payoffs is what we're focusing on there, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's look at an example of the calendar blocking for a client controller.
So for the client controller, some things that we see is I like to think of the Friday before we see this calendar, right? They're wrapping up all their projects and they're thinking of what they're going to start their week with. And so when we look at how they're going to start their week, they're starting out with client communications. They're wrapping up anything that needs to be addressed at that time. And then they are going into their meetings, their client work. One thing that maybe it's on the next slide. Do we want to go to the next one as well? Would be blocking time, and I think we just didn't put the detail in here, but blocking time to meet with CSM. So if we're going to do focused work, we're going to focus on those things that are in that important and not urgent quadrant. Then we have to schedule time, as we mentioned, for those urgent things. And as a controller, that includes blocking times to speak with your CSM to support them if they're stuck on something, to walk them how to, if they're not stuck on something and you just learn something or notice something over time that they are not aware of, that you can have some development time with them. And so that is something, we want to put on the calendar. That can be done in just every other day. We're going to check in for 15 minutes at whatever time, maybe after lunch. So they've had time to get into things and now they have questions and they're going to get all those to you at one time during a day. Maybe you have office hours for them. So just want to make sure that we have a time scheduled so that we're not feeling bad about putting our teams on do not disturb or not answering emails and stuff. So I think you have to schedule in when you will be available to help those team members.
Yeah, definitely, for the support that you
Yeah.
are providing. Okay, let's take a look at our next poll. So our next poll is coming at you because Rachel's awesome in the background. And so our next poll is, what worries you about trying to time block? When you started time blocking, Leslie, what
Did
was
you
the
read
hardest? Well, yeah, what was the hardest thing for you?
I think, and I see this again and again when we onboard new team members, in the very beginning, if you're new to a role, it's really hard. So you have to build your ideal and then adjust it as you actually find out what your day-to-day looks like. So I think the transition time or the transition phase is really the hardest time of time blocking because you maybe have an ideal, but you're not to capacity yet on your billable work. And so I feel like that was difficult in any transitions. I also think sticking to it. So one thing that we've done with team members is encouraging them to turn on a timer, right? So if they've blocked off an hour to work on a tax return, well, okay, when that hour is up, where are you? Right? Okay. And so we know that our tasks expand to fill the time that we give them. And so using that timer rather than just working until something is done is one key. Maybe I was going to share that in tip, but I think that is the thing of learning to live by that after we've put the calendar in place.
So consistency in doing it, right?
Yeah, accountability to ourselves.
All right, it looks like almost everyone has voted. Let's check out these results. So you could only pick one, which meant you had to pick the top one, or as some of you have commented in, you picked other because it's all of them. So, or the top three is what it is. But it looks like I do not know what each day will bring for priority focus is really a third of our attendees have picked that. So that's why it's iteration number one.
Yeah.
And then continued
Being
focus.
flexible. Yeah.
Well, let's get into the CFO role. And the majority of the people on our call today have flagged themselves as sitting in this role of one of many that they were able to choose. And Leslie, you are a CFO, so this is perfect. We can get in and you can share just kind of what your time blocked day looks like.
Yeah, so we talked about CSMs are about 85% billable, controllers around 70, and then our CFO, we are saying is around 55% of client work versus non-client work. And so most of that in our client CFO role comes from or is attributed to supporting team. So here on our responsibilities, our main focus for client work, we have these things built in. So our growth strategies, maybe cash flow management, profit maximization, and then so much more of our time is spent with accountability for our team members, for our clients as well. And then our CSM controller support, Our CFOs are part of our leadership team as they lead a pod of people. And so all of those things are really going to go into our matrix to figure out what needs to go on ultimately on our calendar.
Which you kind of listed a lot of the things that are here.
Right. And as we talked about before, there's a lot of seasonality. So I would say the client CSM and the client controller have seasonalities, a lot of seasonality within their months. And then I think that I found true for me, the CFO role, because most of my clients are on a quarterly consult basis. My time revolves around a quarter. So I know that the month after the quarter is going to be most of my client work is going to be spent on meetings. And then other than that, I'm, like I said, supporting teams and placing those things in a different area. It may be that we do some more firm development. We're not usually going to do firm development on the months that are heavy with us consulting with our clients. So for us, it's a very seasonal calendar, but I still believe that for the most part, I'm staying true to the calendar that we'll look at.
All right, so here are a lot of various different tasks, right, in our Eisenhower matrix. Anything specific you want to point out as it relates to your role here?
Right. So I think I put in here in the delete in the not important and not urgent is micromanaging. So just really, again, going back to that, empowering people to do their role, being available to support them, but trying to step out of that production role. And so that's something we want to work towards deleting. Other things there, the same duplication of tracking, that's probably going to go more on a firm management side than a client management side. So just want to make sure that we're putting things in place and not doing the same thing that's available to us in other places. On our urgent and not important, so those things that we are going to ultimately
We can't hear you. Wait, Leslie, can you hear me? Can anyone else hear Leslie? No, okay, thank you. Wait. Are you back, Leslie? Your earbuds did not last. While Leslie fixes her earbud, Rachel, let's do another poll because we have one more poll for all of you. And so our last poll is whether or not you are signed up for an event that we are having in November. So our DBA firm event, the first week of November in the Woodlands. I heard some noise over there, Leslie. You must be back. All right, let's look at our poll. So there is an event in November, and we can talk more about that at the end here. But thank you everyone for voting. Looks like looking forward to seeing some of you, and some of you are still deciding. So All right, Leslie,
All right,
are
okay.
you back? You are back.
Okay, let's see. Man, I think I need to upgrade my AirPods. Okay, so we were on the Eisenhower Matrix for a client CFO. So some urgent things that we want to do that are also important are answering client requests. So when we look at our time block, we are going to make sure that we have time for that set aside. Um, and of course, the not urgent but scheduled things, these are the things that are important to us. These are the things that are valued by our team. This is why we're in our role. And so these are the things that we want to focus on the most.
So let's take a look then at what does the calendar look like for a client CFO, because 50% of your time is client work and the rest is supporting team. And we know that sometimes there's fires that come up, right? So how did you
Right.
build this schedule?
Yeah, I think this was, there were multiple iterations. I struggled the most with my calendar blocking when I moved to this role, just because of that, because there's less productivity, there's more support. And, but I would say that there still has to be time blocked for deep work, right? Like that's when we're creative. That's when we're improving things within the firm. That's when we're looking at new ways of doing things. And if we are always available to everyone who needs us, we can't be our best. And so I think it's really important. You'll see on this calendar, I work a schedule. It depends on the day, honestly. Like I'm not logged in at 8:30 every day. I don't log out at 2:30 every day. So we're going back to those core hours, but then our ideal schedule here, I work part-time as a client CFO. And so I am going to make sure every day I end my day with figuring out what is going to be the biggest project of tomorrow. And so then we go into the morning. Some mornings I've got on here triage messages and get to the appropriate team member. Certainly do that. A lot of times that's done before I'm at my desk. Sometimes I go straight getting up in the morning, and if I have like a project where I really need to be focused, I'm going to do that before I log on to everything else. Just because I know that's when I can concentrate the best. You'll notice here that I have one-on-ones. So I do one-on-ones with my team. I have two legs of my pod, and then I meet with Marcus as my one-on-one upline, I guess, once every other week as well. So I meet with one pod one Monday. The following Monday, I meet with the other side of my pod. At one time, we met weekly, and that was just too many meetings for me. At one time, you see on the schedule, we have lead team on Tuesday morning and we go straight into team meeting. At one time, we had lead team on Wednesday morning. Again, that morning time is my creative, productive time. And so if I am spending 3 mornings of my week's meeting, it was really hard for me to get in some really deep work. So we did some shifts. We went to that every other meeting on one-on-ones. We moved our lead team into Tuesday mornings right before another meeting that was already happening. So I'm going to know Monday is not going to be like the most productive or it's a productive day because those relationships are very important, but it's not going to be a producer work, right? It's not necessarily going to be billable work. With that, I keep Wednesdays and Thursdays, I try to keep those open for client meeting. I can always open my schedule to more if the clients can't accommodate that, but it's a starting point so that I just don't have my entire schedule open for people to book. I'm doing some personal development that is fabulous, and I want to make sure that that time on Wednesday afternoons when I meet with that cohort, that that's there, right? So that's super important to just keep me growing and accountable and so that I can be my best for my team and my clients. So I have that scheduled in. The other thing I mentioned with the client controller is those office hours. So we do have those office hours. I have mine in the afternoons because I find that that's when I get the most questions from team members. In the morning, they're doing their work, they're realizing what they need help with. And then in the afternoon is when they ping me with questions. And so that allows them to have some time to get their questions together. And then I'm open if they need me during those times.
Which isn't how it started, which is important, right?
No.
Like,
Yeah.
so, meetings have been moved around to accommodate your time blocking schedule, but also others, and when you're at your best and when others need you from a support role. So just an important thing for everyone to hear is this is not iteration number one.
Yeah.
I keep saying that, but that is important because it will change and it will evolve, which is exactly what we want.
And I also think a thing to think about is in this client CFO role or in a controller role, if you begin to see your team members and they're asking you a question as an interruption or a distraction, that is just a frustration with the timing, right? Because that is our role to support. And that's one of the things I personally love about this role is working with my team. And so if I ever feel like those feelings welling up, then I need to figure out why does it feel that way, and where can I put it so that I'm supporting them and I'm enjoying supporting them, and they get everything that they need, right? So it's just not open for all day pings. I've got a place for this and we can work together.
Yeah, that's great. It's awareness on what, why are you feeling that way? And it is
Right.
because it needs to be scheduled somewhere, or where does that make sense to fall?
Right.
Let me share really quick. I know we only have a couple minutes left here, but I now have open the time blocking template Excel file that is a handout. If you clicked it, it should have went right to download. So it should be sitting in your downloads. What you have out here is just a blank slate to work with, and you have a legend with things that we have used and the ones that we just displayed. So you have the PowerPoint PDF to help look at what was on screen, but please keep in mind, change these to whatever wording you want them to be, change the colors to whatever you want them to be. It's just a starting point for you to get into it and to time block and then run it, because that's where we go next is, okay, great, you've created it, you've put this time block together, and next steps are to run it, and run it for a month is what we're saying, right, Leslie?
I mean, you may be tweaking as you go, right? If your first iteration is a train wreck, then yeah, change it faster than a month. But once you've got a good grasp of what you're doing in the time of days that works best for you, then try to stick with it at least a month.
Yeah, consistency, right? It goes back to what we talked about just earlier, is it's great to set this. It's another thing to consistently follow it, because that is when you start to reap the benefits of it. If you set it and it's a train wreck and that just derails you and you don't get back on the track, well, then you'll never have success with it, right? So tweak it and continue tweaking. Don't give up on it. All right. We have next steps for you, and then we can stick around and answer questions for anyone that has any questions here. Bruce, I see yours out there, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So next steps is build out your schedule. Time block your schedule. And step one with that is listing everything that you do in the course of a couple days. And that's everything. However many times you saw a squirrel outside and you looked, note that. Be as creative as you want there. But then this resource is attached here, and it will also be available in our free resources. Next week, we'll have that posted out there. So if you are looking for any other resources, don't forget that those are out there. And that is also where you will find more information on our event in November, for those of you that were unaware of our event. And we do have some additional webinars that are coming up. We're doing one a month. And August 15th, we'll be evaluating your client list and walking through what does that process actually look like. Then September, getting into building and pricing advisory services. And in October, preparing for 2025 with a team of 3 model. So, all right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Leslie, for sharing your wisdom and your time blocking skills there with all of us. For those of you that need CPE, your certificates will be sent to you within 2 to 1 to 2 days. And now, if you have any questions, I'd like to ask for you to share them through the questions panel, and we can make sure that we get those addressed. But if you need to drop because you have only time blocked for this webinar and now you need to move to the next thing, please feel free to go. So there's one question that came in that I do want to address. I wanted to have enough time here, is just tips for applying this to someone in a partner role, which, Leslie, in my mind, that would be similar to the CFO role. So would you agree or disagree with that?
I would say it's similar in that I'm assuming you've still got 50% billable time, and then what you fill that other 50% with is going to look different. The schedule here that we showed that was mine is part-time, so around 25-ish hours a week. I'm assuming you're working a full-time schedule, so that full-time you will allow your percentage that you're doing your billable work, and then you would add in any type of prospecting, firm management, anything else that you do there would go in. So I would definitely think that you can do this with a partner schedule. You just want to, again, start with all the things that you're doing and figure out maybe some of the things that you shouldn't be doing. That might be a good start, right?
Yeah.
Free up some of your time before you write it down on the calendar.
Yeah, well, definitely. How much is in that delete or delegate box, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the quadrant. So, all right, great. If there's any other questions, fire them through. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to us later. We appreciate all of you. Leslie, appreciate you. Rachel, appreciate you. Everyone have a good rest of your day.
Bye, guys.